Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into something pretty fundamental today, pulled from chapter 2 of a source we're looking at, titled 2.pdf. The title of this specific chapter, Consciousness, the Way Out of Pain.
That's a bold title right away. And you're right, the core question these pages grapple with is profound. How do we navigate and, potentially move beyond that enormous portion of human pain that the source claims isn't actually necessary?
The pain that seems self-created,
Self-created,
that
exactly.
really grabs you. So our mission today is to really get inside this perspective. What does it say pain is? Where does this unnecessary pain come from? How does it build up? What's the story with the mind and the ego in all this?
Mm.
And most importantly, what's the path it lays out for freedom, centered around consciousness and presence? This is definitely a deep dive into understanding suffering and seeing, well, a potential way through it.
Exactly, and it starts with that provocative claim you mentioned.
Hmm.
The vast majority of human pain is unnecessary, generated by what it calls the unobserved mind.
The unobserved mind, meaning when you're just kind of lost in thought, not really aware of it.
Precisely. The source describes the fundamental mechanism for creating pain right now as a kind of non-acceptance. It's an unconscious resistance to the present moment.
Resistance to what is, like just fighting reality.
Yes. Think about it. On the level of thinking, this resistance shows up as judgment. You're constantly labeling the moment. This is bad. I don't like this. This shouldn't be happening. That sort of thing.
Right. And emotionally.
Emotionally, that resistance manifests as negativity. Simple as that.
So the level of pain you're experiencing is directly related to how much you're fighting against what's happening right now.
That's a key takeaway from this source, definitely. And it adds that this degree of resistance is tied to how strongly you're identified with your mind.
Meaning how much you think your thoughts are you.
Pretty much, yeah. The more your sense of self is wrapped up in your thinking, the more intense the pain becomes because you are that resistance. The less identified you are, the more open you are to the now and, well, the less pain you experience.
And the mind, in this view, it's inseparable from time, specifically past and future time. It says the mind cannot function and remain in control without time, so it sees the timeless now as threatening.
It puts it very simply. Time and mind are, in fact, inseparable.
Sure.
The mind operates on sequences, on what happened, what needs to happen. The present moment in its pure form is outside that framework. And the mind, wanting control, kind of struggles with that.
There's that analogy it uses about an earth without people, just plants and animals.
Yeah.
Would time even exist in the way we think of it?
Right. Like an oak tree or an eagle wouldn't check a clock.
Mhm.
The source suggests their perspective would simply be, of course it's now. The time is now. What else is there?
It's a powerful image to make the point.
It is. And the source acknowledges we absolutely need mind and time for practical living, remembering dinner plans, learning from past mistakes, planning for the future. But it stresses that the problem isn't having a mind or using time.
It's when they take over.
Exactly. The problem is when they take over our lives. That's where the dysfunction, pain, and sorrow set in.
Because the mind is constantly layering thoughts about the past and future over the present, kind of obscuring it.
Exactly. It covers up the present moment, which the source says is the only place you can actually access your true nature, your being. This constant mental focus on time creates what it calls an increasingly heavy burden of time, both individually and collectively.
And that includes all the lingering emotional pain from the past, all that baggage.
Yes, that residual pain adds to the burden. And this burden accumulates every single time the precious moment is ignored, denied, or just treated as, like, a stepping stone to some future outcome.
An outcome that only exists in your head.
Precisely. An outcome that only exists in the mind, never in actuality. You're always chasing a future that never arrives because when you get there, it's just the nowy. Okay, so how do you hit the brakes on creating this present moment pain? The source's instruction is, well, it sounds simple, but it's profound. Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have.
Make the now the main event, the primary focus of your life. The past and future are just brief trips you make when necessary for practicalities, but you always return to dwelling in the now.
And the recommended practice, always say yes to the present moment.
It lays it out so directly. What could be more futile, more insane, than to create inner resistance to something that already is? What could be more insane than to oppose life itself, which is now and always now?
The promise here is huge then. This surrender, this saying yes to what is, it isn't passive resignation, is it?
Not at all. The source says surrender to what is, say yes to life, and see how life suddenly starts working for you rather than against you. Now, I can hear the listener thinking, and the source anticipates this. But wait, some present moments are truly awful, unacceptable, unpleasant.
And the response is blunt. It is as is. But here's where the wisdom comes in. It then guides you. Observe how the mind labels it,
Ah, the labels again.
and how this labeling process, this continuous sitting in judgment, creates pain and unhappiness.
So it's not about liking the moment, maybe not even accepting it in a this is great way, but about noticing how your mind's reaction adds that layer of pain.
Spot on. By becoming the observer of your mind's labeling and judging its resistance patterns, you start to step out of them. You learn to allow the present moment to be. The source says this is how you get a taste of the state of inner freedom from external conditions, the state of true inner peace.
The action step then is accept, then act. Whatever the moment holds, you accept it as if you had chosen it, which is a big ask.
It is. But the idea is to work with it, not against it. Make the moment your friend and ally, not your enemy. This, the source claims, will miraculously transform your whole life.
Wow. Okay, that's about the pain we create in the moment. But what about the stuff that hangs around? The accumulated pain. The old stuff.
Ah, yes. This is where the pain body comes in. If you haven't been able to access that power of the meal, each emotional pain leaves behind a residue, like an emotional scar tissue.
Okay.
And this residue doesn't just vanish. It links up with existing pain from your past, including the pain absorbed in childhood from what the source calls the unconsciousness of the world around you.
And this accumulation forms a negative energy field that occupies your body and mind. It's described almost like a separate entity, isn't it?
Yes, the emotional pain body. It's an invisible entity in its own right. It has two states, dormant and active.
Sleeping or awake.
Right. And someone deeply unhappy, it might be active almost constantly, maybe 90% of the time. For others, it's mostly sleeping, but wakes up in specific situations like relationships or when triggered by loss or hurt.
And anything can trigger it, even like a stray thought or an innocent remark.
Anything that resonates with a pain pattern from your past. If it's ready to wake up, it will find a hook. Anything can set it off.
The source mentions the variations in pain bodies, from obnoxious but relatively harmless, which it likens to a whining child,
Yeah, annoying, but maybe not destructive.
to incredibly dark, vicious and destructive monsters, true demons.
These can manifest as physical or emotional violence, directed outward at others, or, chillingly, inward at their host, the person themselves.
Attacking yourself, how does that look? What does that mean?
It generates profoundly negative, self-destructive thoughts and feelings. The source says it often leads to illnesses and accidents. In the most extreme cases, it can drive individuals to suicide. That really brings home the monster description.
Seeing this alien, nasty creature, as it calls it, in someone else must be shocking.
Definitely. But the source immediately pivots. It's more important to observe it in yourself. It gives you a list of signs to watch for, even subtle ones. Any sign of unhappiness.
Like irritation, impatience.
It's a somber mood, a desire to hurt, anger, rage, depression, a need to have some drama in your relationship, and so on. The crucial part is catching it the moment it stirs, the moment it awakens from dormancy.
And what is the pain body's agenda? What does it want?
Survival. Simple as that. Like any energy field, it wants to continue existing.
Yeah.
And it can only survive if it gets you to unconsciously identify with it.
So it needs you to think it is you.
Exactly. Its goal is to rise up, take you over, become you, and live through you. And for that, it needs fuel. It needs food.
And its fuel is pain.
Yes. It feeds on energy that matches its own vibration,
Yeah.
anything that creates further pain in whatever form. Anger, destructiveness, hatred, grief, emotional drama, violence, and even illness.
Wow.
The source states this so clearly. Pain can only feed on pain. Pain cannot feed on joy. It finds it quite indigestible.
So when the pain body takes over, you are like driven to create or seek out more pain, even unconsciously.
It says you want more pain. You become a victim or a perpetrator. You want to inflict pain or suffer it or both. The source knows this is hard to accept. You'll likely be not conscious of this and maybe vehemently claim that you do not want pain.
Of course, who wants pain?
Right, but it challenges you. Look closely and you will find that your thinking and behavior are designed to keep the pain going.
Because, as it points out, if you were consciously choosing more pain, that pattern would crumble because Nobody is consciously insane. You wouldn't choose it if you saw it clearly.
Exactly. Consciousness is the key, which brings us to dissolving it.
Which brings us to the way out of this accumulated pain.
Right.
The pain body is described as powerful, but also, well, afraid of the light of your consciousness.
It's the dark shadow cast by the ego, afraid of being found out. Its lifeblood is your unconscious identification with it and your unconscious fear of facing the pain. The warning is stark. If you don't bring the light of consciousness to this pain,
You're stuck reliving it.
you are forced to relive it again and again.
But then, the source offers reassurance. Despite seeming like a dangerous monster, it's actually an insubstantial phantom that cannot prevail against the power of your presence.
This connects to that deeper truth mentioned in many traditions. All pain is ultimately an illusion. But the source grounds this immediately, asking, is it true for you? A mere belief doesn't make it true. The point isn't believing it, it's how you realize this truth, that is, make it real in your own experience.
And the way to make it real is by observing the pain body, which, conveniently, it tries to avoid. It doesn't want to be seen.
Yes, the pain body doesn't want you to observe it directly. But the moment you observe it, feel its energy field within you, and take your attention into it, the identification is broken. The source says a higher dimension of consciousness has come in, which is presence.
You're no longer the pain, you're the witness or the watcher.
That simple shift changes everything. It cannot use you anymore by pretending to be you, and it can no longer replenish itself through you. The source says you've tapped into your innermost strength, the power of now.
So unconsciousness creates it, and consciousness transforms it, kind of burns it up.
That's the core principle. It quotes St. Paul, everything is shown up by being exposed to the light, and whatever's exposed to the light itself becomes light. And the method is crucial. You cannot fight the pain body.
Why not? Isn't fighting negativity good?
Trying to fight it only creates inner conflict and thus further pain. Simply watching it is enough. And watching, in this context, means accepting its presence in that moment. Not agreeing with it,
Right.
but acknowledging it's there.
It describes the pain body energetically as trapped life energy, split off by identifying with the mind, becoming anti-life, almost like a creature eating itself.
Yeah, it even links this to why our civilization has become so life-destructive. But it notes that even this anti-life energy is still life energy. It's just distorted.
And once you become the watcher, the pain body doesn't vanish instantly. It has momentum, right? Like a spinning wheel.
Exactly. It keeps going for a bit, slowing down.
Yeah.
It'll try to trick you into identifying with it again. It wants to survive.
The source mentions this might even manifest as temporary physical aches and pains.
Yes, but they won't last if you maintain presence. The instruction is clear and powerful. Stay present, stay conscious, be the ever-alert guardian of your inner space. Your presence, your conscious attention, is the force that watches the pain body and feels its energy directly.
And if your thinking gets caught up in it, like if you start thinking angry thoughts while feeling angry,
That's identification. Your thoughts align with the pain body's energy field, and you're feeding it again. The source says, where there is anger, there is always pain underneath. That negative mood plus the negative thought pattern means you're unconsciously back in the pain body's grip. You've lost the watcher role.
So unconscious here means identified with a mental or emotional pattern, the absence of the watcher.
Exactly. But sustained conscious attention, simply being present with the feeling without getting lost in the thoughts about it, severs the link between the pain body and your thought processes. That's the transmutation.
It offers a beautiful analogy for that.
Yeah. It is as if the pain becomes fuel for the flame of your consciousness, which then burns more brightly as a result.
That's incredible. It's like alchemy, turning lead into gold, suffering into awareness.
That's precisely the connection it makes, the esoteric meaning of the ancient art of alchemy. The transmutation of base metal into gold, of suffering into consciousness. The result, it says, the split within is healed, and you become whole again. And your responsibility going forward, not to create further pain.
Let's go through the summary of that transmutation process it provides, step by step. It seems really practical.
Okay, the steps are, 1, focus attention on the feeling inside you. Really feel it. 2, know that it is the pain body. Recognize it for what it is. Don't mistake it for you. 3, accept that it is there. Don't fight it. Don't resist its presence. 4, don't think about it. Don't let the feeling turn into thinking. This is key. Stay with the sensation, not the story your mind makes up. 5, don't judge or analyze. Just observe. No good or bad. 6, don't make an identity for yourself out of it. It's an energy field passing through. It's not you. 7, Stay present and continue to be the observer of what is happening inside you. Be the watcher. Maintain that awareness. 8, become aware not only of the emotional pain, but also of the one who observes, the silent watcher. Feel the pain and feel the presence watching it. This is accessing the power of the now. 9. Then see what happens. Let the process unfold.
The source includes a note about women and the pain body, saying it often awakens just before the menstrual flow. It calls this a potential most powerful spiritual practice.
Yeah, time for potentially rapid transmutation of all past pain if one can stay alert and present, watching the feelings without being consumed or identifying with them.
It presents the process as remarkably simple, something a child could grasp intellectually, but the key is experiencing it, right?
Absolutely. That experience is the potent transformational tool.
Hmm.
Reading about it is one thing, doing it is another.
Simple, yes, but the source acknowledges it's not always easy. It talks about intense inner resistance to disidentifying from your pain. Why would anyone resist letting go of pain? That sounds strange.
This is fascinating and perhaps counterintuitive, yeah.
Yeah.
The resistance is strongest if your sense of self, your identity, has become deeply entwined with the pain body over a lifetime.
You've literally built an unhappy self out of it. Your story is the pain.
Yes, and you believe that this mind-made fiction is who you are. The core issue is an unconscious fear of losing your identity. Who would I be without my suffering? That fear generates powerful resistance. The source phrases it powerfully. In other words, you'd rather be in pain, be the pain body, than take a leap into the unknown and risk losing the familiar unhappy self. Better the devil you know.
That's quite an insight. It tells you to actually observe this resistance in yourself. Watch the part of you that doesn't want to let go.
Yes, observe the attachment to your pain. And this is the most striking instruction here. Observe the peculiar pleasure you derive from being unhappy.
Pleasure from unhappiness.
Maybe pleasure isn't quite right, but a familiar comfort, a known energy. And observe the compulsion to talk or think about it. That subtle pull towards negativity or drama, complaining, reliving it.
And the path through that resistance. Making it conscious, seeing it clearly.
Exactly. By simply observing the resistance, you bring it into the light. The resistance will cease if you make it conscious. Then you can follow the steps. Take your attention into the pain, be the witness, and begin the transmutation.
The source is very direct. Only you can do this. Nobody can do it for you.
True. While acknowledging that the presence of someone else who is intensely conscious can be helpful. Being in their state of presence like it is. It uses the analogy of a small log next to one burning fiercely.
Your own flame catches light faster.
It can accelerate your own transformation, yeah. It suggests this is the true function of a spiritual teacher or some therapist who can sustain this state of intense conscious presence. They hold the space.
So much of this pain is tied up with the ego and the mind. The source brings up fear as a major component of underlying emotional pain. And you might wonder, isn't some fear just smart? Like fearing fire?
The source makes a critical distinction there. Not touching fire isn't really fear in the psychological sense. It's recognizing a known danger based on past learning or common sense. It's minimum intelligence and common sense, using lessons learned in the past for practical matters.
So that instinctive pulling back from danger isn't the psychological fear it's discussing. That quick flinch, isn't it?
Correct. An instinctive shrinking back from danger is different from this psychological condition of fear.
And what defines that psychological fear? The stuff that plagues us.
It's divorced from any concrete and true immediate danger. It shows up as unease, worry, anxiety, nervousness, tension, dread, phobia, and so on. All that background hum of anxiety.
The source's crucial observation here is that this kind of fear is always of something that might happen, not of something that is happening now. It's future-oriented.
You are physically in the here and now, but your mind is constantly projected into the future. This creates what it calls an anxiety gap. If you're identified with your mind, that gap is your constant companion.
And you can't cope with the future because it isn't real yet.
Right. The source says you can always cope with the present moment, but you cannot cope with something that is only a mind projection. You cannot cope with the future. It doesn't exist yet. How can you cope with something non-existent?
And this links directly back to the ego, the sense of I.
Absolutely. When the egoic mind is running your life, it's in control. But because the ego is fundamentally a phantom nature, a mental construct, it's very vulnerable and insecure. Even if outwardly confident, it feels constantly under threat.
And Emotion is the body's reaction to your mind, so the ego's constant feeling of being under threat generates.
Fear, of course.
Yeah.
While we point to specific fears, fear of loss, failure, being hurt, the source states that ultimately all fear is the ego's fear of death, of annihilation.
Annihilation of the self-image.
Annihilation of the ego itself. To the ego, its very existence is precarious, so death is always just around the corner. Not necessarily physical death, but the death of its identity.
And this fear of the ego's death permeates so much of our behavior. It uses that incredibly relatable example. The compulsive need to be right in an argument and make the other person wrong.
Think about that. You're defending a mental position with which you have identified. If that position is proven wrong, your mind-built sense of self is seriously threatened with annihilation. The ego feels it cannot be wrong, because to be wrong is to die.
And the consequences are huge.
Massive. The source notes the staggering consequence. Wars have been fought over this, and countless relationships have broken down. All because of the ego's fear of being wrong, which it equates to annihilation.
But when you're not identified with your mind, when you're rooted in that deeper presence, being right or wrong suddenly, it just doesn't matter in the same way.
Right. It makes no difference to your sense of self at all. That desperate, sometimes violent, compulsive, and deeply unconscious need to be right dissolves. You can state your truth clearly and firmly, but without aggressiveness or defensiveness.
Why?
Yeah.
Because your sense of self isn't tied to that opinion anymore.
Exactly. Your sense of self comes from that deeper and truer place within yourself, not from the fragile, temporary mental construct of the ego.
So becoming aware of defensiveness in yourself is a major signpost. Asking, what am I defending?
A huge one. And asking yourself, what are you defending? The source answers, an illusory identity, an image in your mind, a fictitious entity. By witnessing this pattern, you disidentify from it. And in the light of consciousness, it quickly dissolves.
This is the end of all arguments and power games, which are so corrosive to relationships.
And the source's take on power is also revealing. Power over others is weakness disguised as strength. True power is within, and it is available to you now, in the present moment.
So the takeaway is that most people walking around, if identified with their mind, are living with fear as a pretty constant companion, whether they label it that way or not.
The source claims you can assume virtually everyone you meet or know lives in a state of fear, in varying intensity, even if they only notice it when it flares up intensely as anxiety or panic.
Beyond fear, the source points to another deep well of egoic emotional pain. A fundamental sense of lack or incompleteness, of not being whole, that something is missing feeling.
This can be a conscious feeling of not worthy or good enough, or a more unconscious, intense drive of craving, wanting, and needing. A restlessness.
Which fuels that compulsive pursuit of ego gratification and things to identify with in order to fill this hole they feel within. Always chasing the next thing.
Chasing after possessions, success, status, recognition, relationships, anything to feel better about themselves, feel more complete, trying to fill an inner void with outer things.
But the source delivers a punchline. But even when they attain all these things, they soon find that the hole is still there, that it is bottomless. The fix is temporary, if it comes at all.
And that's a crisis point. They're then really in trouble because they cannot delude themselves anymore, or the delusion becomes much harder to maintain. The ego, being a derived sense of self based on external identification, is inherently needy. It constantly needs to be defended and fed.
The list of things people identify with is long. Possessions, work, status, knowledge, appearance, relationships, personal history, belief systems, political, religious.
Yes. And then comes the challenging statement that really lands. None of these is you. It asks you directly, do you find this frightening? Or is it a relief to know this?
Because ultimately, whether you realize it or not, all of these things you will have to relinquish sooner or later. You can't take them with you.
You'll face that truth, the source says, at the latest when you feel death approaching.
And it reframes death from this perspective. Death is a stripping away of all that is not you.
All the labels, all the identities, gone.
Which brings us to the incredibly powerful final thought in these excerpts. The secret of life is to die before you die, and find that there is no death.
A profound idea to sit with. Letting go of the false self before physical death.
Absolutely. So we've navigated this text, exploring how unnecessary pain is born from resistance in the mortar. Now, how it builds into the pain body, the mind and ego's central role, the nature of psychological fear rooted in the ego's fear of annihilation, and this deep-seated futile search for wholeness in external things. It's quite a journey.
It really is. And always circling back to the source's core message, the way out of this self-created suffering is through consciousness and presence. By watching the mind, witnessing the pain body, and becoming the observer, stepping back.
And if, as the source suggests, death is the stripping away of all that is not you, and the secret of life is to die before you die and find that there is no death, what does that mean for you right now in your own life?
Hmm.
What would it mean to start identifying what is not you, all those labels and identifications, and in that letting go, discover what truly remains? That's something worth pondering long after we wrap up this deep dive.